Thank you for joining us. I'm here with the prosecutors and investigators who have worked diligently on the investigation of criminal attempts to interfere in the administration of Georgia's 2020 presidential election. Today, based on information developed by that investigation, a Fulton County grand jury returned a true bill of indictment, charging 19 individuals with violations of Georgia law arising from a criminal conspiracy to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election in this state. The indictment includes 41 felony counts and is 97 pages long. Please remember that everyone charged in this bill of indictment is presumed innocent. Specifically, the indictment brings felony charges against Donald John Trump, Rudolph William Louis Giuliani, John Charles Eastman, Mark Randall Meadows, John Cheeseborough, Jeffrey Clark, Jenna Lynn Ellis, Ray Stallings Smith III, Robert David Cheeley, Michael A. Roman, David James Schaefer, Sean Micah Tresher Steele, Stephen Cliffgard Lee, Harrison William Prescott Floyd, Travion C. Cootie, Sydney Catherine Powell, Kathleen Austin Latham, Scott Graham Hall, and Misty Hampton, also known as Emily Misty Hayes. Every individual charged in the indictment is charged with one count of violating Georgia's Racketeer, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act through participation in a criminal enterprise in Fulton County, Georgia, and elsewhere to accomplish the illegal goal of allowing Donald J. Trump to seize the presidential term of office beginning on January 20th, 21. Specifically, the participants in association took various actions in Georgia and elsewhere to block the counting of the votes of the presidential electors who were certified as the winners of Georgia's 2020 general election. As you examine the indictment, you will see acts that are identified as overt acts and those that are identified as predicate acts, sometimes called acts of racketeering activity. Overt acts are not necessarily crimes under Georgia law in isolation, but are alleged to be acts taken in furtherance of the conspiracy. Many occurred in Georgia, and some occurred in other jurisdictions and are included because the grand jury believes they were part of the illegal effort to overturn the results of Georgia's 2020 presidential election.
Well, there you have it. Trump now faces a total of 91 felony charges in 4 different cases, a total of more than 800 years in prison if convicted on all the charges. But this one here, racketeering, as Power 96 has been saying, and I think David Youngblood has been saying, they saw this one coming. Racketeering in the state of Georgia. We got that to talk about, and perhaps some other things to talk about with Barrington and Austin. Barrington, you know what? Let me save you because save you for last on this one, because I know, as they say, Barrington is loaded for bear on this one. Austin, 18 more. 18 co-conspirators, 41 charges in all, 13 more against Trump. Is he going to prison?
I'm doubtful that he will go to prison, even with with all of this. I'm certainly hopeful. He certainly deserved to be in prison. He deserved to be in prison, as we are on the show now, because of the not obeying the orders of Judge Chutkin and the judge in Miami. He's not going to obey the judge in Georgia. Making negative, inflammatory comments that are threatening to those presiding over the trials and others. Do I hope he goes to prison? Absolutely. Think about this. We have, for all intentional purposes, the Republican nominee for president, who is out on bail. Not one, not two, not three, but four serious cases. Yet it is not impacting his standing in the polls. Yet it is not negatively impacting his ability to raise money. In fact, it is helping him raise money. He was bold and crazy enough to say last week publicly that one more indictment, referring to what was then pending in Georgia, is all he needs to get the nomination and to put him back in the White House. And think about it. All of this was completely unnecessary. And another example of white privilege, I call it gone wild. Did Democrats act like this in 2000 when the Supreme Court ruled in favor of George W. Bush? No. He could have won Georgia had he not been ignorant and encouraged the voters of Georgia to do mail-ins. But you remember during the campaign, he questioned mail-in ballots, which had been proven as truthful forms of expression of the intent of the people. So he brought it all on himself, and I'm enjoying watching him stew in his own, what.
So the first former president in U.S. history to face criminal charges. He's been indicted 4 times now this year alone for crimes tied to his presidency, which perhaps was the most divisive 4 years in American history. A civil jury this year found the twice impeached former president guilty of sexual assault. And now RICO charges. And for those who don't understand or may not know the RICO statute, which Congress enacted in 1970, it broadens the scope of prospective prosecutions against participations in organized crime. Under RICO, prosecutors can freeze the assets of suspects until the case's outcome. If the RICO charge is proven, it could lead to a maximum of 20 years in prison per charge. And a guilty defendant also loses all assets related to racketeering, including those connected to lawful businesses. And finally, Barrington, a judge in a RICO conviction can also add civil penalties as well.
Yeah, I disagree with my brother. Good morning. Good morning, all. I disagree with you, Austin. They said, from what I heard, from what I've read, they said that there's a 5-year minimum of time in prison if you're charged under RICO statutes. So Orange Jesus won't be able to get away this time. And the beauty of this too is that he can make the federal cases go away if he becomes president and does as he claims he will, that he's gonna fold the DOJ under the presidency. But this won't go away.
Well, it's also a questioning, Barrington and Stacey and viewers of the timing. Attorney Willis last night said that she would like to see this go to trial in 6 months. From what I'm hearing, that's not likely. And as I understand, I'm also concerned with this statute or bill that was signed into law by the governor recently that allows that she and other state attorneys can be removed from office. Initially, the legislation was designed so as not to interfere with this trial. So they could come across as being, bipartisan and fair, and it was supposed to take effect in 2025. Now it can take effect in 8 weeks, 6 to 8, I believe 8 weeks. So I mean, he does deserve to be in prison, and I certainly recognize, and you're absolutely right, on a minimum of 5 years. But I'm just concerned about the delay in this process. This has been a 2.5 year process, and when you see the broadness of these indictments, and you kind of understand why it took so long. Having said that, I wish that she had knocked this out in a year and a half, so that we would not be up against next year's election.
Which is what he wants. Which is what he
Constitutional
wants. He
error
wants to delay
to
all of this
challenge
until
those
after
results
the
in
election.
our state courts.
Yeah.
The indictment alleges that rather than abide by Georgia's legal process for election challenges, the defendants engaged in a criminal racketeering enterprise to overturn Georgia's presidential election result. Subsequent to the indictment, as is the normal process in Georgia law, the grand jury issued arrest warrants for those who are charged. I am giving the defendants the opportunity to voluntarily surrender no later than noon on Friday, the 25th day of August, 2023. I remind everyone here that an indictment is only a series of allegations based on a grand jury's determination of probable cause to support the charges. It is now the duty of my office to prove these charges in the indictment beyond a reasonable doubt at trial. I would like to take a moment to thank the Superior Court Clerk, Shay Alexander, and her staff.
So a couple of things here. And I see that Mike V and Timothy Williams has commented on it. Mike V says the Tangerine Tyrant won't go to prison for this, but the rest of the folks indicted will go down. I think you're going to see a lot of folks start snitching on each other to save themselves. And Timothy Williams says if the other defendants are not in fear of facing jail time, Trump won't touch prison. And that part right there is something that I thought about as well, that if they are not afraid, then they're not going to turn. But part of RICO, what RICO normally does, and spoke to some law professors on this, is that it does shake things up where a defendant, one of the defendants, at least one of the defendants, do turn state's evidence. And it's been rumors, right? Yeah, I've heard the rumors on the federal side that Mark Meadows might be the guy. And Mark Meadows is now directly front and center here in this case. So
Mark
do you
Meadows
see
is
it?
thinking louder than he was 24 hours ago.
He's saying, because isn't it about the weakest link?
It's always about the weakest link. And I mean, the idea that they can take your property, whether legal or not, that's a great pressure point.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of pressure points that they can use to force you to do what you don't want to do.
If you don't mind,
Yeah.
Surveil Evans with 11 Alive. Quick question: can you clarify in Georgia the mandatory minimum when it comes to RICO charges, whether it's servable by probation or how that might play out?
The RICO charges has time that you have to serve, so it's not a probated sentence.
Madam District Attorney, what's the time?
I like Barrington's term always pressure point. Let me tell you another pressure point for me to never to remain fearful of the law and always walk in that straight line. One of the defendants and one of those indicted, middle name is Austin. And when I heard that last time, I jumped up in bed. I'm like, wait, what did I do?
You thought they snuck up on you and you didn't know.
Exactly. I haven't done anything.
That's
But
why
at the heart,
have a name like
heart
that.
of this, at the heart of Trump's problem in Georgia, is his call to the Secretary of State. He says in that call, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have because we won this state, and flipping the state is a great testament to the country. I only need 11,000 votes, fellas. I need 11,000 votes. Give me a break.
But the thing, Stacy, think about it. Everything that's coming out now, we hear that the ones who were pushing the hardest to get get this to overturn the election, they said privately that it was garbage. That there was no way. John Eastman said that if they took the case to the Supreme Court, that they would lose 9-0. So it makes me wonder what type of morons we have that would sit down and know that this is an issue, and still put themselves in. They deserve everything they get because they didn't have to put themselves in this situation.
And here's Rudy Giuliani.
They're craven and they're greedy.
Yeah, and Rudy Giuliani's text message was revealed yesterday as well. He sends a text message to the Georgia Secretary of State's chief investigator. He says in the text message, "Is there a way to speed up Fulton County signature verifications in order to have results before January 6th?"
Yeah. Criminal intent.
January 6th. So the way it reads to me is that this, and I would imagine that the special counsel has this text message as well, because this is directly tied to that prosecution for sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many. I still believe that half the story hasn't been told, and that there's still so much more that's going to come out.
Well, what do you think else is out there, Barrington, that hasn't been told?
I think that there are more people involved than we know. I think that this is a vast conspiracy with lots of tentacles all over the place. I still think that there may be some folks. They said that there's still unindicted co-conspirators who haven't been named.
What are they saying?
What are they saying?
But they're talking.
Yeah.
I'm
and
sorry.
Who are they? So I still think that this thing has a lot of legs. One of the things too, as I see all of this, I wonder how much of this is kabuki theater, because everybody's trying. Well, not everybody, but more than a few people are trying so hard to justify Orange Jesus not going to prison. Well, he was president, and he was this and he was that, and what type of precedent would it set? That's a large issue for me.
Right president. That's what it was said.
That's a huge issue for me, because as we know, if it was any of the three of us, we would be buried and never seen again forever. They'd put us in the Supermax in Colorado, and that'd be the end of it, right?
And think about what of the 19 indicted persons, including Trump. Think about you see that picture of all of them. That's not mugshot, but just photos of all of them. But there are 5 or 6 who are not photographed. It's just darkened. Those are folks who are cooperating. What are they saying? To Barrington's point, what are they saying? What have they told officials in Georgia and elsewhere that we're simply not aware of? I think it's much broader.
Yeah.
So we talk about Fani Willis and her penchant for this RICO. Somebody says she's the RICO queen. Now, another high-profile case of hers is that of the YSL group, right?
Yeah.
And we know that in that case, Gunner walked free, right? Young Thug, a jury failed to convict him. They hung last month. And she's going to retry him. 7 defendants took plea deals. So there's questions as to whether or not she can be successful here, because as of right now, has she been successful with the Young Thug case? And we see Make It Plain is about to join us. Mark, welcome, Mark Thompson.
Good morning.
Hey, Mark.
What y'all talking about? Let me guess.
You still at the 50th anniversary of hip hop show in Yankee Stadium. It looks like.
Talking about you.
No, not hardly. How's everybody feel this morning?
Good.
Okay, how are
Mark,
you?
we're talking about Fani Willis. I was just mentioning, we've heard people call her, even perhaps even our commenters, the RICO queen. The most recent high profile RICO case is that of the YSL, which hasn't necessarily been as successful yet as she would have liked it. So this bringing the RICO charges here doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to see convictions.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to say about that. So if she's not been successful, the other RICO cases are still ongoing, or I haven't kept up with all her cases. Has she lost RICO cases?
Yeah, so the YSL case is continuing. As I mentioned, you did have a couple, few people walk, whether it be deals. In Gunner's case, he said he didn't, he didn't rat anybody out, but he still took a deal. 7 other defendants other than Gunner took plea deals. Perhaps the biggest fish is Young Thug, and he's still on trial. He was a jury hung last month in his case, and she's going to retry him. But I guess my point is, that kind of tempers this idea that Trump and his cohorts here are automatically going down.
Well, yeah, but look, they leaked some evidence just the other day where they've got them actually hacking voting machines.
Yeah.
And I haven't really kept that up with the other cases, quite frankly. So I apologize for that. But
no, that's okay. That was just interjected in there by me.
They've got hacked voting machines, which really puts at jeopardy the upcoming election. Dominion settled with Fox. We need to figure out whether they have a key that gets them in there at all times. And that might give us an opportunity to get into some other things with Dominion and what they do. But there's that. We've seen some of the messages. I mean, it seems like they've got a string of communication, text message, and everything else.
Yeah.
Whatever RICO is, I mean, if this in RICO, I don't know what could be. Now my question would be, and I ask the attorney here, is there something just beneath the threshold of RICO? In other words, if a group of people is charged with RICO and they've committed crime, but now you can't prove as much of the conspiracy, can you still win on the crime perhaps committed in an individual and disjointed way? That would be my question, because it appears that crimes were committed. In the RICO, I guess you have to prove that it was all conspiratorial. But again, and I'm not saying that I don't know how it couldn't be, because all these people work together.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I don't think she would have brought it if they didn't have evidence of the communication between all of them doing this. And listen, we saw some of it in real time in the media.
Mm-hmm.
Plus the fact, when you talk about that many people, you got to know how many of those people are going to flip.
Yeah.
How many?
Well, that was what we were talking about too, Mark. The chances of someone flipping here, there's been unproven statements in the media about Mark Meadows, and
Right.
on the federal cases. Now, this is a case ripe for someone to flip, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people will, as soon as they sober up and realize that there's no pardoning from this.
Yeah.
I thought Kemp could pardon.
So did I.
Yeah, I didn't realize he couldn't. So they said last night he couldn't. Is that true? So he can't pardon.
True.
Right.
Nope.
I wrote in my story yesterday.
They're
Is
stuck
that
with
true, Barrington?
Yeah, they're
Well,
stuck.
why do we think he could? Where did that come from that we thought he could?
Because most cases on the state level is often up to the governor. But something was written in Georgia's law that makes it difficult for the governor of Georgia to pardon a state conviction.
Impossible.
Or impossible.
He can't do it. He
Okay.
can't do it.
Well,
Good.
there you go. And so here we are. Fani Willis is saying you guys got into noon, August 25th. I mean, a lot of times we look at prosecutors and we say they're no nonsense. Well, Fani Willis appears to be totally no nonsense. And I want to ask too this question, and you guys can take turns on this. You know, we see Trump continually, the judge and the prosecutor in Manhattan, the judge and the prosecutor at the federal level. The prosecutor, of course, the same prosecutor in Florida is Jack Smith. He hasn't gone after that judge because that judge is, let's face it, she's a MAGA member, the judge in Florida. But we continue to see him violate the order given by Judge Chutkan, the federal judge in Washington. And we know in this particular case, there's got to be some sort of a gag order as well. But he's really testing the limits. How much further will they allow him to go before one of these judges say, you know what, he needs to cool off behind bars?
Cool off and put him in prison for 72 to 96 hours. He'll come this.
But they're walking a fine line because they understand what he's trying to do. He's trying to get this trial done in public spaces. They you know.
Well, I don't think he's trying to get the trial done at all.
There's this deference to him because he was a president.
Until someone brings the hammer down on him with these repeated violations of orders by the judge, until he is treated like the four of us would be treated if we, you know, kept on talking smack, he's going to keep talking.
Yeah, he is.
So, Mark, you know, what might have to happen before a judge says, hey, I'm fed up?
I don't know. I think Georgia is the most likely place where he's going to get locked up. I even think the sister in D.C. is probably she's going to have a tough time doing that. Mm-hmm. And I think we get to the other 18 flipping once they realize how real jail time is for them. I don't know that there's the will to put a former president in jail on the part of any judge. I really don't know about that. But if his co-defendants are put in jail, they're going to flip. I also, and I may have said this on this show before, I don't remember. I also think, you know, ultimately, I'm not getting my hopes up because I think the pressure is going to be on Joe Biden, if not to pardon, to commute. The former president.
You think he would?
Yeah, because Carter.
But Mark, you got to understand
Carter
that on the state side, he can't pardon on the state side, right? He can only pardon federal crimes.
Can he commute on the state side?
Well, Attorney Tarver has joined us.
No, the governor has no power over this case.
No, we're saying the president. We're talking about Biden. We just realized the governor doesn't. What about Biden? Can Biden commute on the state side?
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
Biden has absolutely no power. No federal official has any power over this state indictment or the proceeds therefrom. So, you know, this is a problem for Donald Trump, and it's a problem for each and every one of those individuals in this indictment, because they really are now outside of the realm of everything they've dealt with. Rudy Giuliani has friends in the federal system. Mark Meadows has friends in the federal system. All these people have judges that they have appointed or that they've assisted in the appointment of. And don't discount the idea that that is important, that they've played a role in the appointment of these judges. But now you're dealing with a whole different creature. Now all those connections are not going to help, and you're dealing with not just Georgia, but you're dealing with Fulton County. And that's a nightmare for these individuals.
Well, Mark, Austin brought up something earlier about the new law in Georgia where it gives the judge the discretion to remove a prosecutor. Do we see that happening here?
From my perspective, it's possible, but the fact of the matter is it allows you to remove a prosecutor. It doesn't allow you to dissolve a case. So ultimately, whatever prosecutor gets involved with this, you know, could they look at it and say, okay, there's not a viable case here? That would be very, very difficult given the breadth of these of the indictment and what's here. But no, a prosecutor, they'd have to really look at it, and they'd have to really make some real determinations of how that would be done. And that would be such an overtly political move. Not to say it wouldn't happen, but it would be just an overtly political.
Well, we've come to realize that the Republicans don't care how things look.
Right.
If it's their will, it's just their way.
But now, wait. A judge can remove a prosecutor?
No, the governor can remove the
governor. So that law passed? I know it was on the. They were trying to pass.
It passed and should go into effect in about 6 or 8 weeks.
Yeah. Initially, Mark, it was supposed to be 2025, but the bill that was signed says 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks from now.
And it goes into effect in October. I think it's October 12th or something like that.
Well, so wait a minute. Can remove a DA or a specific prosecutor on a case?
No, a DA, a prosecuting DA. You can't just take out. For example, if I'm the head prosecutor and I bring in assistant prosecutors to handle it, can't go in and say, okay, I don't want this assistant prosecutor or that one. However, you can remove that particular DA who was the DA in charge of that jurisdiction and say, okay, we're going to go with a different DA, which in effect is basically changing the entire character of a case, because no other DA in Georgia was going to bring this case.
No,
nobody else had the courage to do that. So theoretically, they could bring in someone from Cobb County.
Yeah,
where this happened, which is one of the more.
It's interesting because in Attorney Tarver, Cobb County is where Giuliani is alleged to have committed some of his alleged crimes.
Yeah, we don't hear anything about the prosecutor from Cobb County though.
The DA is elected.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean
a governor can remove.
Yeah. Well, Mark, we just saw that in Florida.
That's what DeSantis is doing in Florida. He's removed 2 already.
Yeah.
She won
an elected official,
67% of the vote.
Yeah. And in those cases, a federal judge, whom both of the district attorneys that were removed by Ron DeSantis appealed to the federal court, and the federal court agreed with them, but said we are powerless to do anything about it.
Yeah.
As long as they can articulate some sort of reasons, and those are false reasons as they were in the state of Florida, about her conviction rate. And how do you articulate that when every case is different? So realistically, they can do what they need to do, and they can use the law to justify what they need to justify. It's unfortunate, but that's pretty much the way it is. And until you get more people, more voters to stand up and say they are being disenfranchised by this type of activity, that's the only thing that really changes that.
So we got 9 in all, guys. We keep talking about whether he is going to go to prison, whether or not someone will let a former president go to prison, how judges are reticent to send a former president to prison. But we're looking at 91 felony charges in total, which carry, if convicted on every single charge, carries more than 800 years in prison. What is the message if he doesn't go to prison?
Thank you.
That what black people already know, that the so-called criminal justice is some bullshit, and that it takes care of certain people. We already know that. Nobody needs to go very far to really get a sense of what this country represents. Just talk to some black people.
Wait, did Barrington just cuss? We can cuss on this show.
Well, let me tell you something, Mark. So the other day, Barrington wasn't on the show, and we played a video, and somebody was cursing on the video, and one of our astute viewers wrote in that Barrington, about Barrington not having anything on Barrington. So Barrington is the resident cursor.
Lord have mercy.
One of the beauties about the Georgia case is there are some requirements that you must be incarcerated on some of these charges. And the good thing about it is that there's a real presumption against non-incarceration. In other words, there's a presumption that you will go to jail, a presumption against staying out of jail. So, at least in the Georgia case, there is a real difficulty with having someone stay out of jail with this. I have to say the same with the federal system. If you're convicted of many of these federal crimes, the fact of the matter is simply this. The case law says that it is presumed that you are going to go to jail. In fact, it is almost mandatory that you go to jail in many of these cases, most of these cases. Now,
Yeah.
can you get around it? Yeah, you can, but it would be a huge, huge stretch. And a judge that actually went outside of that would be going outside of what used to be guidelines. See, there used to be guidelines set up for this, mandatory minimums. It's interesting because now Republicans don't want, they want mandatory minimums.
All of a sudden.
But when it didn't favor them, they got rid of them in cases before the federal courts. But there are mandatory. There used to be mandatory minimums. They're not there anymore in the federal courts, but there are strong presumptions that you will go to jail.
Mark, again,
Mark, do you think that Trump will actually? I'm sorry, Steve. I just want to answer if I may. Do you think that Trump will actually see the inside of a cell?
Only for holding right now, but do I think that ultimately he will go to jail? I think that there is a strong possibility that he will do jail time. And I never said that before. I've always said I didn't think that was the case. But I'm now starting to look at a lot of this, and a federal judge, again, if you understand the federal system, federal judges must take into account what is called relevant conduct. So any federal judge that's sentencing on the DC case, let's assume he's nicked on one of those DC charges, that judge must take into account everything he's charged with in the state of Georgia, as well as New York, as well as the Florida, as well as the civil cases, as well as E. Jean Carroll. They must take account of relevant conduct. As long as you can tie it to his character or his behavior, that's all comes in. And that's why I say that it would be very, very difficult if he is convicted of a charge for a judge in the federal system to say they're not going to send him to jail for at least some period of time.
So again,
I hope Michael's right. I don't think he's going to go to jail. I think.
But Mark, what message is that though? That's my question.
Well, no, you answer, yeah, and I'm connected. One, I don't think he's going to go because I don't think that these judges, some of them, maybe the sister in DC, but have the will to do it. You're talking about locking up a president of the United States. I think that's still.
He's not the president.
That's a former president.
President.
But he's a former president. And if you notice, Barrington, every president, once they leave office, for the rest of their lives, is still referred to as president.
Yeah.
So
I removed that for him because he's a criminal.
Well, but he's an unconvicted criminal so far.
Yeah.
I don't think the will is going to exist to lock him up because some people still don't believe January 6th. They still can't believe it. That's somehow he's still able to get over and convince people that, this is he's just a kid doing silly things. He's just a bad boy. So I don't know. I don't think he's gonna go to jail. What it says about us, to answer your question specifically, Stacey, it says, and we may not be ready for this because a lot of us like to sugarcoat our victories as a people. It proves that there really is not the democracy we think we have in this country.
Yes.
And in the fine print, once again, to what extent were they able and are they still able to hack voting machines and voting systems? Dick Gregory used to say something. He could say, why can't I have a card just like my ATM card that allows me to vote wherever I am and the vote go to whatever jurisdiction? He said, Dick Gregory used to say, whenever he would put his ATM card in the bank, it never gave him $10,000 more accidentally than what he asked for. And these are the same companies that make the ATMs.
Yeah. The
same companies that make the ATMs do the voting machines. So why can't the voting be as secure and as fail-safe as it is when it comes? Have any of you ever put money in an ATM and they accidentally gave you an extra $10,000 and you just walked away with no?
I wish.
And it's never not giving you the money you asked for. So how is it that it can be so accurate when it comes to money, but yet is able to be so vulnerable when it comes to voting? We do not have a full democracy yet in this country.
But to Mark's point, this country is the only one that spends as much time and effort to make sure people don't vote. Every other country bends over backwards to allow people to vote. So that shows you the criminal nature of these politicians.
That's a good point, because Dr. Chavis and I was in Malawi back in 2019 for their elections there, and the lines were so orderly. They were around the corner. You had the politicians come to the lines and shake hands with the people on both sides, right? And then we went to the prisons. They were online in prison to vote as well, encouraging everyone to vote. So that's a good point, Barrington.
What
I
year was
would,
that?
however,
What year was that?
That was 2019.
I was in South Africa in 1994 for the first elections. We registered people in prison to vote in 1994. That's 30 years ago, 29 years ago. We also registered people from other countries who were migrant workers in South Africa. That's the only way they could get jobs.
Yeah.
So there were people who were migrant workers from Namibia and Angola voting in the South African presidential. This is in 29 years ago.
Yeah.
And we can't get it together here in 2023, 2024.
Well, Mark mentioned President Biden, commuting or possibly pardoning Trump if he is indeed convicted. What message would that send?
That's a great question.
50 years ago, 50 years ago, 49, Nixon ended up, had to step down and was pardoned. And it was the same argument, pardon, for the good of the nation. We've got to move on. We've got to heal the nation. It's basically the same argument that I think would be the case if Biden were to do that today. And my question as a 11-year-old then was, I was talking to my dad about it, was what message does that send? 49 years later, what message would that send? Frankly, if Nixon had gone to prison, I think America would have been fine.
Yeah.
You survive a civil war, several world wars, civil rights movement. If Trump were to go to prison now, America would be fine.
So how does that look?
Here's what I would consider to be a big consideration.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that's now overriding, there's all these different prongs to criminal justice, one of which is deterrence. And that is one of the things I think is really overriding at this point.
Yeah.
Unless you cut off the head of this whole thing, which is Donald Trump, unless you viciously attack all of the prongs of this, you are going to have this movement, this white supremacist movement, springing up over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Deterrence is really a factor here. Deterrence works for people who have something at stake in the society. They talk about deterrence for street criminals. Well, there's no real deterrent to keep them from doing minor crimes because they don't have anything much to lose. They're not that invested in terms of their freedom. They don't have huge houses and bank accounts laid aside. They're not living that standard of living, but these individuals are invested in the system. So you have to make it very clear that they're going to be punished, and they're going to be punished severely. And that's why I believe that things are different, and why Joe Biden cannot, under any circumstances, pardon a Donald.
Well, I think Joe Biden is painted, as far as that's concerned, I think he's painted himself in the corner anyway, because he says, listen, the White House says there's no way he would pardon his son. If you feel like you can't pardon your son, there's no way you can pardon another man. I don't care if he was president or not. It just seems to me, but maybe I'm just thinking in a more civilian way and not a political way. But that's what he said.
Well,
right. What Attorney Talbot said is so important, because here we have a 77-year-old man-child that has never ever been held responsible or accountable for all of the crap that he's done ever. And he's shown that if you don't do like Attorney Talbot said and cut off that head, he's going to keep on pushing and pushing and pushing and bracing up against the boundaries.
It's interesting. And Mark, I'm going to go to you on this, and anybody else can follow. But listening to Barrington, people could say he sounds angry. And I say that only to say this, that you got a black district attorney in Georgia, you have a black judge in DC, a black district attorney in Manhattan, and black folks were really, really disadvantaged to no end during the Trump presidency. and now you have this talk of someone like him who has caused so much divisiveness, who has opened the doors wide open, kicked the doors down for white supremacy to march through. It seems so insulting, one, but also it's a moment too that we look at and say, yeah, this guy has done so. You want him to be punished, and now, like we said earlier, 91 charges, Mark. So we could see the irony too, that his fate may rest in the hands of African Americans, particularly an African American woman who he despises. He despises as a whole African American women. Are we in our anger? Are we missing something, Mark?
No, as a matter of fact, I want to respond first to something that was said earlier about, the state we're in and why Biden would have to commute apart and all those types of things. Unfortunately, Abraham Lincoln set the precedent. After the Civil War, it was forgiveness, pretty much amnesty all around. And what he obviously could not have known at the time, and nobody could have known, is that as a result, the Civil War has never stopped. It has just continued in different forms. And this is the latest iteration of the Civil War, which is a war against us, and obviously expands to a war against anybody else who is oppressed or seeking freedom, or who wants the right to vote. That's what this is all about. This is the latest iteration. That's what January 6th, that what probably may have started out as Civil War cosplay on January 6th ended up being something else, and something very real. What you just described, though, I think is important. I don't know, we're missing, we're not emphasizing it enough. I think the paradox, the irony here is that the result is the cause. The battles that we have won, which have allowed African Americans to be in positions of some power when it comes to the legal system, that's because of our movement, because of what we've done, right? That movement has been so successful. That's why you see a proliferation of Black folk in these positions. The Manhattan DA, the New York AG, Fani Willis, the Black judge on the federal bench. That's a result of our struggle. That's what Dr. King died for. That result is Trump's cause celebrate to stop.
Yeah.
We got to understand that. He is clowning, and they are clowning because they look at all these niggers and nigresses who are overseeing our prosecutions.
Yeah.
I think the thing, as I said, we are missing is to what extent, we just got a little snippet of it. To what extent were they able to actually hack voting machines?
Mm-hmm.
What does this password they got? We got to get into that. And so, because otherwise, what are we, busting our what's for next year? If somebody has the ability to just go right in there and play with some numbers, that's what we really got to get into. And Michael, I don't know. Garland has just been weak in everything.
Yes.
To me, that's a whole nother FBI investigation.
Yep.
You're telling me that there are people who are actually able to hack. Well, who is that? Who's doing it? How are they able to do it? Is this a ring? Is this some kind of thing that's going on? Is that a larger RICO? You got to investigate, but Merrick Garland doesn't want to do it. He's not going to do it. And he is of that same spirit of politeness. Well, I didn't get on the Supreme Court, but they're going to give me the Attorney General. Let me just... Because, see, Democrats are afraid. Let me tell you something. They're afraid. They don't want the same thing to happen to them. If a Democrat gets in office, they don't want... Because they know Republicans will return the favor. Well, you don't have to worry about that if you don't commit any crimes. They're going to do it anyway. They might...
I was going to say, don't commit crimes.
Impeach Biden anyway.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably going to have a vote on impeachment, as dumb as that will be.
Yep.
So what? They don't even think to impeach him. He ain't done anything.
But it's interesting because Mark said what I say. Democrats are weak and feckless, and they continue to fight this fight with rules that were established in 1930, 40, and 50 when Republicans don't give a damn. Republicans are scorched earth. They're like, we're all about holding and maintaining power. They don't care about anything else. and Democrats are always like, well, we don't want to. I mean, I have talked to Democrats who have told me that I'm too rude because of the things that I say about them, SOBs, white domestic terrorists. I don't have anything good to say to or about any of them because they're fascists. They want me dead. Why am I going to be kind and nice to someone who wants me dead?
Attorney Tarver, I saw your I noticed your phone rang earlier. Was that Trump asking for a defense? How do you defend, Attorney Tarver? How do you defend RICO charges like this? How do you defend?
Well, look, here's the situation with any conspiracy type charges. You simply have to show that there was a plan, a common plan, and that your defendant, the person you represent, was involved in that particular plan. That's what they are trying to show here. Part of the issue in proving this case for the prosecution, one of the good things, is that they appear to have significant testimony without motive to lie. In other words, a lot of the testimony here comes from Republican operatives. You don't see any Democratic individuals being brought in to the grand jury. And in fact, even a cursory review of the indictment suggests that it is all Republican testimony that brings this. So it's difficult to defend the type of situation because the normal tact in RICO situations is to say either number one, I didn't know about the conspiracy, I had no idea of participating in it, and I wasn't involved, or number two, the other co-conspirators here are lying to protect themselves about the activity. So that second prong is pretty much gone. This is going to be a huge case. You're talking about 18, 19 defendants. They just finished the school case a number of years ago. That took 7 months to prosecute with only 10 defendants. And here you're talking about governmental entities. You're talking about probably some large scale documentary evidence. So it's going to take some time. It's difficult. So what you want to do as a defense attorney is you want to muddy the waters as much as you can.
Mark?
I have a question for Attorney Tarver, with two questions, if you don't mind. That's a mistake when you bring another host on as a guest.
No, we love it.
But so, Attorney Tarver, what do you make of Fani Willis saying she wants to try everyone together all at once? Will that hold? I know sometimes people like to separate out. Is that something that is, I mean, is that reasonable to you? Is that manageable if you're a prosecutor?
It's manageable. I was involved in a RICO type case here where we had 16 defendants and they were all tried together. You know, it's ugly because it takes a lot of time. But people think, look, you have the right, each person has the right to cross-examine a witness when it comes up. So conceivably, you'd have 19 people cross-examining each government witness, but it never turns out that way because generally the defense attorneys will make an agreement amongst themselves and say, well, enough is enough. Because as a defense attorney, you don't want to just keep pounding the same thing over and over and over and over again. So whereas we might think that you're going to have a lot of time with every witness, it's not always that way. Sometimes you'll only get 2 or 3 people who will cross-examine by agreement, and they get what they want to get and they leave it alone because too much cross-examination in many cases can backfire. And
what about the timetable on this? It sounds like she wants to move swiftly, but this is going to take some time, right? So he conceivably could be campaigning. Well, first of all, is it even realistic that something will be going forward next year?
I think next year would be the best bet. What you're going to see almost immediately is you're going to see a motion from Trump's lawyers to try to bring at least his matter to the federal courts because it involves a federal question, a novel federal question, that deals with election law and the ability of individuals who are running for office to be prohibited in some way from being able to participate in that process, as well as his status as a former president. So I expect that motion. Each of these individuals will have their ability to bring their own motions, and they will bring them, and they'll bring many and often. So you're not even talking about getting to anything realistically until 2025, in my estimation.
In this case, right?
In this case. We're only talking about the Georgia case at this point. That's probably the danger of indicting a lot of people, is each of those persons has their own individual interests. Each of those persons has their own individual rights. And if they have good attorneys, they're going to maximize the ability to use the timing. Delay is the friend of the defendant.
Mm-hmm.
So when you hear prosecutors saying we want to move this thing quickly, of course they do. But the more you delay, the more things change, the more stories change, the more witnesses move away, they change their story, they get involved in different things that cast doubt on their motives for how they act. And so these defense attorneys are going to try to use everything they can to their advantage.
So
I would think, though, the risk with these clients, though, delay is not their friend, Michael, because the nature of some of these characters, they just gonna commit more crimes. I mean, he's not that any of us are criminals, but if somebody had us like this, we lay low. So we just go chill for a minute. Let's just go lay low over here. These jokers don't know when to stop. They inflame even more. So if I'm a prosecutor, I'm like, yeah, y'all go take your time because I know you're gonna do something else.
Yeah, but you know what? Let me just weigh on that, Mark. When is the last time you heard anything significant from Rudy Giuliani? When is the last time you've seen Mark Meadows? When is the last time Sidney Powell said anything? Those guys on the street, they're talking a whole lot of mess because they're not really facing anything. But the power operatives that were involved in the planning and scheming here, they are quiet and they are afraid. And that's why I say deterrence works on certain types of people. These are the type of people that deterrence works on because they've never been held accountable before, never thought they were going to be held accountable here. And now they know that there's a significant possibility that they may end up behind bars.
Well, Michael, we have not heard from
Robert
them because
Robert.
I'm sorry, Rob, we have not heard from them. I'm sorry, I don't know why I said that. We have not heard from them because they haven't been on Fox and stuff. They might have just gotten advice. Okay, y'all continue to do your machinations, but just do them not as publicly. I find it hard to believe that they're being that quiet unless they believe. Well, here's another question. I know I've pretty much taken over the whole interview with Robert, but he's got good information on this and experience.
Mm-hmm.
Are all these jokers under surveillance right now too? Is that an ongoing thing, you think, or do they have fear or reason to believe that their conversations, everything they're doing is under surveillance?
They have fear to believe that. Generally, upon indictment, a lot of those things stop. But here's what I think their bigger fear is. In my experience, when these types of things happen and you get the indictment and you look at it, you will see things in there that you will not understand how the prosecutor got that information. And you'll start to question everybody around you. And so that's when you become isolated because you don't know who the snitch is.
Right.
You don't know who's going to give you up. And you don't know who's going to run to the prosecutor first and say, I've got this. The way these things work in these situations is that once this indictment comes down, it is a run to the prosecutor's office to say, hey, look,
right,
how can we deal with this? How can we work this out? And so, I've seen situations where, and this just happened 2 weeks ago, where I had two of my client and another person riding down in the same bus from the jail to come to court. And as soon as they got off the bus, my client goes into the lockup. The other person goes into another place and gets set free. Well, he got set free because he told on my client. He's sick. and you never know who the person is that's going to turn on you. So you keep quiet. You keep your head down because the closest confidant that you thought you had could become your biggest enemy.
So they paranoid.
Oh yeah, in a big way.
And paranoia gets worse if you high too. But go ahead.
I wouldn't know anything.
Them old dudes going crazy.
Went left.
But Attorney Talbot, do you think that Trump is paranoid too? Do you think that he's acting the same way that other people do? Because he act like he don't give a damn.
Trump is a madman. Okay, and I say that not because of sitting here. You got to remember, I was a city attorney for Atlantic City. Trump had his casino in Atlantic City. We dealt with Trump and Trump's people. He has the attention span of a 5-year-old. He is not mature when it comes to those types of concerns. He's been lucky to surround himself with strong people who were fairly good at bullying and had the same idea that he had. But now those same people, again, it is not lost and should not be lost on anyone that the operatives, the individuals who are testifying and giving information in these cases are all Republicans. They are all individuals that he brought in, he surrounded himself with, he dealt with. And so now he's going back and he's thinking about all the conversations he's had. That's what's happening at night. He's thinking about all the conversations he had. When did I say this? When did I say this? How did I say this? Why does it, and those are the things that keep somebody up at night. I know that he's got to be a tortured man at this point.
So just briefly before we close out, just want to get back to the timing of the trial, right? And you guys did a great job of discussing that. One of the things that we talked about early was this fact that in Georgia, he can't be pardoned, right? So it would behoove Fani Willis to at least get it started prior to the election, right? And if that, and which could be next summer, which could be next fall, September, October. But as long as she gets it started, there would, at that point, if he were to win, even if he took office, there would be nothing to stop that train, right?
Well, she's ready to start. This thing is rolling, but she has less control than you think she has. Ultimately, once you file this indictment and once it gets in front of a judge, it is the court that has control over the docket and how quickly it moves. And this, by virtue of what it is, cannot move quickly as long as you have 18 or 19 defendants. Even if you were to try to bifurcate or separate them, as Mark talked about, which might be a proper strategy, each of those individuals would still be able to file motions dealing with the other person's cases because they are intricately involved and interconnected in such a way that you would be hard pressed to be able to kind of separate them and move forward and say, well, we're just going to move forward with this one and deal with that. No motions affect the other one. It's all connected.
Yeah. Last word. Each of you, Barrington, start with you. Your last word on this morning.
Orange Jesus is going to jail.
Austin,
Lock him up.
Attorney Tarver, your last word.
The DC case is still the one to look at, still a strong case, and that's the one I believe is going to land Donald Trump in jail.
Wow. And of course, Mark, make it plain, Thompson.
Well, good to see everybody as always. Let me just simply say this, that we talk about, his behavior. Trump, we're definitely seeing a man-child who is still suffering from when his parents dropped him off at their military institution. He's trying to win their affection back, even though they've gone on to glory. And it's something he's never gotten, and we've all been made to suffer for it. And if we don't do something about it, this whole nation is going to continue to be codependent on this fool.
Yeah.
And look, I got to throw this in there because this is what I said earlier, and Greer's mentioning this. She says, why are the brothers so passionate about his being held accountable? Black men are extra offended. Is it because, and Barrington, go ahead, say your answer, Barrington.
Because 2.3 million of us are in prison or jail for shit that wasn't that as anywhere as egregious as what this man has done.
Who's got the bleep button?
and specifically, Trump called for the death penalty.
Yeah, against the
Central Park Five.
Yeah.
He hasn't backed off either.
So
although they've exonerated.
Yeah, so no, he's got to be held accountable for
We've got
his
people who've stolen much less and are in jail. Trump tried to steal America.
Yeah.
He's still on the street.
There you go. There you go.
And I want to know, why if Merrick Garland saw fit to appoint special prosecutor to look into Hunter Biden, why he doesn't see fit to do the same for Trump's 3 children, as well as his son-in-law.
Because Merrick shouldn't have never been a Supreme Court nominee in the first place. That's a whole nother show.
Yes.
Merrick argued against DC statehood when he was in U.S. attorney, I believe. I guess that was a position he was in. He was one of the Solicitor General. He was in that office. He was one of the prosecutors in the Marion Barry trial. And yet,
you know that.
Look it up. Yet he doesn't want to prosecute Trump, but you're gonna prosecute Marion Barry.
Yeah.
And we didn't know Merrick Garland. He never should have been nominated That's one of the. That's one thing we've never agreed with Barack Obama about. Why are you nominating Merrick Garland in the first place? And I'm telling y'all, this behavior lets you know. This behavior lets you know what he would have done as Supreme Court justice. He would have been, you know,
Mamby-pamby.
Mr. In Between. What's the song say? Don't mess around with Mr. In Between. That's who Merrick Garland is. And you appoint a special prosecutor for Hunter Biden.
Yeah.
That's how they do. Well, you know, we're doing Trump, so we got to do Hunter because that's got to balance it out.
Yeah. It's foolishness. Weak. And afraid of their own shadow.
Wow. Well, hey, this is unfolding as we thought.
And see, all these black women, that's the other reason. Counts. This is all these black women. So I'm telling you, that's the other reason. The sidelining of Kamala Harris with the help of the Oval Office, Biden's team. Yeah. Let me tell you what that's about. That's a prosecutor. So if she were to become the president, you know what would happen. Got to nip that in the bud. Yeah. You cannot allow her to become president. So you have to silence. That's why they talking about, well, who's going to be next? Gavin Newsom. Wait a minute. What? You just going to skip over vice president?
Vice president, exactly.
Yeah.
They didn't skip over Richard Nixon in 1960. They didn't skip over Al Gore. They didn't skip over HW. But you're going to skip over the sister because she's a black woman and because she's a prosecutor.
Yeah. And because she's smarter than all of them put together.
See, there's the answer to the question, Greer. Why black men? I mean, I think they just demonstrated it. Why black men are extra offended is what.
So are we to assume by her question that black women aren't as offended?
No, I don't think we should assume that. I don't think that's what she's saying at all. I think it began, Barrington, with your disposition on this. And it's signaled that perhaps you're not the only one. And of course we were 1,000.
But I'm gonna say this though, with all due respect, we're not offended enough. Because I'm gonna tell you something. You mentioned since you put out there what I was doing this weekend. I'm at Yankee Stadium at Hip Hop 50th anniversary. There were boos for Ice Cube.
Oh, he's over there. Glad you said that.
Because I was running around. See, we got to be clear there. See, and he's become an operative. I told everybody sitting next to me.
Yeah.
Who didn't even realize why he booing. I explained to him. I said, now watch. I bet you money he's not gonna sing F the Police. He don't sing that no more.
Yeah.
Because he's with them now. And that is causing. Remember now, the original assault on Kamala was two things. When she was running and they knocked her off. She was a bed wench, and she was a prosecutor who locked too many of us up.
Yeah.
That's how they hit her.
Add immigrant too, because that was the
right. She wasn't really an African American. Yeah. Those are the three things. That was a hit job. Yeah. And so you've got this. So they have a formula. They can pick off just enough black men. They might be able to do something.
You know, and we have been especially vulnerable as black men to that type of picking off too.
Right.
Yeah.
And so wait a minute now. So as black men, let me ask black men a question. Are you really going to align your experience as a black man with Donald Trump? He's a victim now. You're gonna allow Ice Cube and other people to tell you that?
That's it.
And it's so interesting you say he didn't do that song, because that show was about all of the things that got them where they are. Yeah. And that song.
He don't do that song no more. He's not gonna do it no more.
Probably ever.
No, because he's over there now.
Yeah.
I'm like, bring that. But people booed.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised they even allowed him to be on the bill.
I know.
I tried to organize people to stand and turn their backs on him. Nobody want to do that, but people went boo.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, because him and that punk Carlson are good friends now. I saw the clips of them driving in LA or whatever.
Well, that was it's one of the most atrocious things you could ever see.
Yeah. Let me tell you something.
So black men aren't offended enough, Greer.
Yeah.
Need to be offended some more. Because we going to jail.
Yeah.
For a paper cut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, but people like Ice Cube should be grateful, because if they were in South Africa, in apartheid South Africa, they'd be getting necklaced.
Barrington.
Barrington went there.
Barrington.
On that note,
we better go. Barrington having necklace and fantasies and whatnot. He ain't gone back there.
No, I don't have no fantasies. I'm just saying that the way that
Oh yeah,
those folks rolled,
that's right.
you betray them, you're out.
Mm.
Bootalazy, Nkata,
Yeah.
knock him out.
Yeah. So
Wow.
that's all I'm saying.
I know what comes next. So,
Timothy
what do you
Timothy
say?
Williams says, "Oh Lord, Barrington."
But it's true.
Well,
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
well, you
Well,
know, this will play out.
Just to really bring it around, what it comes down to is consequences. What are the consequences of them acting like that? What are the consequences of the Ice Cubes and the DJ Academic and the others of and the Kanye West of turning into what they turned into? We're still buying their
Wait,
records.
so
We're still supporting
right,
their
and
music.
Mark,
We're still putting them on the stage.
And
There's
Killer
no
Mike with
why-
Brian Kemp.
Killer Mike.
consequences. There's
So-
no
Killer
All of them.
Mike with Brian Kemp too. Don't leave him out.
but
Yeah,
Mark,
But
you're
But we can't. But ain't nobody buying his records. I don't know what records he got. But go ahead. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say
you're
that. Go ahead.
plugged into that scene. You're
Yeah,
plugged
can y'all
into
name a Killer Mike record?
Nope.
Mark
Okay, I'm
Thompson,
serious now. Have folk blow up and be, I'm big time rapping. Where the record? I don't know, see no records. Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say, Mark, you're plugged into that and to hip hop. You're really plugged in. You know a lot of folks. What's the feedback are you getting, if any, on the Ice Cubes, the Academics, and others, Killer Mikes of the world? What is there any type of disgust among other hip hop artists?
Not, I don't. Well, maybe some underground conversation. Nothing. No. See, they're organized. Other folks aren't.
Yeah.
You know, people who are organized operatives who are part of an op. I mean, that's the thing they got going on.
Mm-hmm.
Then once they get that operation running, all the rest of us are left only to react to it.
Yeah.
And it's hard to organize a reaction to an op that's up and running and fully going, and that is algorithmically promoted on Twitter. Our reaction, our resistance to it isn't. That's never going to go viral. It's the op that goes viral. You know, the defense doesn't go viral because it's not in tune or in bed or in conjunction or in operation with the social media itself. The things we see on social media, their proliferation is there for a reason. That is not an accident. It's not organic.
Yeah.
Oh, everybody's tweeting and following this. No, it is pushed. It is encouraged. It is purposely showing up and getting impressions on our stuff, while our stuff isn't getting impressions in the same way on everybody else's. That is
absolutely,
and that's the danger. So this is even more sophisticated than COINTELPRO, and it's made to look like it's a natural thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about tangibles? What about black men? What about foundational Black Americans? See, all of that is an app.
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
Well, we're
And
gonna wrap
all
it up
comes
now,
from the
guys.
same place. It began with the hits, the hits on Kamala, and then it transformed in all these. Wait a minute, we can do something here, and that's what it is. All of that is an app.
Wow. Hate to end this conversation. Y'all seem like y'all just warming up.
But we need to come back in, because I would love to have Mark on again for us to discuss how we fight against this, because we can't sit down with our hands between our legs while they continue to do this and divide us and tear us apart and imprison us and neutralize us and marginalize us. We need to find ways to organize.
So how do we do that, Attorney Tarver?
Well, look, if I had to answer that question, we wouldn't be in the situation where we are right now. I think part of it, realistically, is we need to make sure that we have a multi-pronged attack. It has to be social, it has to be legal, it has to be political. And part of what I have not seen is the ability of us as Black Americans to put our money where our mouth is. Every other group puts their money where their mouth is. They put together sophisticated organizations. We talked about this the other day. The Heritage Foundation, these other foundations, all these foundations set up just for one particular purpose, to advance right-wing and white supremacist causes. Yeah. We don't have an activist group to do that. I'm not talking about a research group or a maintenance group or anything. I'm talking about an activist group to come up with policy, and not only to come up with policy, but to implement that policy. And that policy is from grassroots up. It's not just a political strategy It has to be a grassroots up strategy. That's why we can't control voting, because we have no grassroots political operation to register people for voting.
Well, as Barrington
They're
said,
putting their
we're
money
gonna
where their
have to
mouth is.
we're gonna have to bring everybody back. Hopefully, we can find a day in which everybody's available again. Thanks so much,
hopefully.
Austin, Barrington, of course, Attorney Tarver. We don't want you defending Trump, Attorney Tarver. So
Don't have to worry about that.
No, I know we got to go, but I want to ask the Attorney Tarver that question though. What kind of attorneys are going to take these cases? I mean, what kind of people even want to touch that? Is that just about getting some personal money?
I think
what would be the incentive to take these cases?
I think you have two categories. You have people who just may want the notoriety. They think it's going to take them from one place to another, and they don't mind that they're going to be categorized with that particular group. And then you have individuals who are true believers, people who say, Trump is being persecuted, and I want to be part of the defense strategy. And then a third category, of course, of people who just want to get paid. And, I feel sorry for them, because there's a strong likelihood, given his history, that they won't. So you have three categories of individuals who are doing this. He's not going to have.
Ego. I can be the one to save the president, the former president.
Yeah.
See,
Going to have a problem there.
Johnny Cochran would never take this case. Greer just asked. No, Johnny Cochran wouldn't take this case.
Well, on that note,
no, because everything fits and they can't acquit.
they can't.
I mean, this is tight, y'all. This don't look good. I know look, when I saw all that stuff, I'm not even in it. And I started to call Fani myself and start telling on people. And I'm not even in it. I got scared. I said, whoa, where was I over here? I mean, they got those folks dead to rights.
Yeah, so, it was worth the wait. It was definitely worth the wait. And I've been critical of Fani Willis, because I've said, you've got to move these things along. But I now understand what she was doing. This is a broad stroke indictment. One of the broadest ones I've ever seen, even for a RICO case. So, she wasn't playing. And again, I keep stressing this. These are all Republican people turning against. It's Republicans eating their own here.
And I keep stressing as we go home, I keep stressing he now faces 91 felony charges. If convicted on every single one of those charges, he faces over 840 years in prison. He's been convicted by a civil jury of sexual assault. His business was convicted last year of fraud. It goes on and on. He's twice impeached. It goes on and on and on. He called for the execution, basically, of the Central Park Five, the now exonerated Five. So it goes on and on and on. And folks, we will certainly have more of this in shows to come. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.